Even if only one person connected with that song and it helped one person, hell yeah. You know, and the same with the docuseries. I'm like, if one person watches that and is like intrigued by that and enjoys it, or goes and runs a race, or figures more out about their health, then I'm like, hell yeah,
sure.
I helped one person. Like that. So.
In the afternoon?
Yeah.
Not in the morning?
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Yeah. No, I'm an early, and I like to play earlier too. Which
Really?
is with the, yeah. I like good. I can't. I'm not like a night owl. I'm like an early bird. I get up early, so.
That's not a very musician thing.
No, it's not. And my mom says that all the time. She's like, I'm so surprised because I've always been like that. I always go to bed early, get up early. So.
Yeah, I did this book with these rappers this one time. They were like, let's meet in the studio at 1. And I thought it was like afternoon. They were like, no, let's meet there at. I was like, how could you be starting at this time? This is insane.
Yeah.
I wonder how much of that is like sort of like acting. Like, I wonder if everyone's actually probably not that way. And then they're just.
I don't know. There are some people that I've worked with and they're like that and they just get going like late at night. But I'm like, no.
Yeah, I feel like working normal, regular person hours is way better.
Yeah. There a lot of the LA people to like write with in LA, they, you know, if you want to do like a co-write or anything like that, it's not before lunchtime. Like some of them want to start like 3 p.m.
Right.
And I'm like, you got to understand, I'm on that East Coast time. Yeah, that's 6 for me.
Yeah.
I'm winding down at that point.
Yeah. And then also, I feel like that means, yeah, like if you're someone who wakes up early, you work out, you eat, you do stuff, you're not peaking at 3. You're like already on the decline. Like
yeah.
You got to figure out when I think creatively you have to figure out when you're peaking, and then you have to design your life around that, which I guess would be weird. If you peak at 1 a.m., that makes you into a vampire or something.
Yeah, that's not me.
So you're like, what time do you get up?
This morning I got up like 4:45. So
Why that early?
I just wake up early. Normally I get up and go to the gym early.
Okay.
I like to beat everybody else in there so I don't have to fight for anything. When I'm at home, I get up around that time and I make my coffee, I come sit back down with the dog, I read and journal, do all that stuff, and then I'll go hit the gym. And
yeah, walk me through your morning routine. So what are you doing?
So yeah, on the road's a little different, but if we go like when I'm at home, wake up, around 5ish, 4:45, 5ish, sometimes a little bit, 5:15. Have my coffee, sit there with the dog, I read, journal, just kind of like chill for a minute.
Like what's a minute?
Like 45 minutes, something like that. So I'm out. I try to be out the door by 6 o'clock.
Okay, to go to the gym.
Yeah, it takes me about 15, 20 minutes to get to the gym. And then it's either because there's a class there a few days a week, and so they like take up the whole gym.
Yeah. And
so it's either get there like 4:30.
Yeah.
Or try to be there by 7. To like, yeah. So it depends, but go to the gym for a couple hours.
Hours?
Yeah, I'm in there for a bit. And then I go to the coffee shop in town, go sit and have coffee. I meet my friends there or whatever. And then I go back home and I run. And there's a trail where I live, so I'm like constantly walking that trail all day.
Wow.
And then that's
that's not part of the working out. That's just you're on the trail, just being active to think.
Yeah, I don't like to sit. I constantly walk, and I'm training. It's less than a month away now. November, first weekend in November, 30-hour race. So I'm trying to hit 100 miles.
Have you done that before?
No. The most I've ran 2 50-mile races. And then a couple weeks ago, I ran, it was like 30 miles. So I'm kind of at that halfway. Yeah.
Wow. So, but how often, I mean, that sounds both terrible and wonderful. Like, I get what it does for you. How often do you actually get to do that, though? I imagine that's the exception, not the norm, because you're on the road, right?
Running or races?
No, your whole routine. Like, how many days a month are you actually getting to do it the way that you want to do it?
It has not been like that as much lately. I say lately, the last year, basically. Yeah. But when I'm on the road, as soon as we get there, and I prefer to get there early.
For a show, like the day before, you mean? Or what do you mean?
Yeah, so we roll in. When you're on the bus, you typically leave midnight, 1 in the morning. And, of course, I sleep. I get off the stage. I get in the bed. Keeps me out of trouble.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't drink or anything. So it's like I get in the bed and we wake up, sometimes it's like 7 a.m., just depends. And I get up, have my coffee, I find a gym. The headline tour, I had all the gym equipment, like squat rack, everything in the trailer. So I work out there. But I'll go, I map it out, find a gym, go work out for a couple hours, come back, have my lunch or whatever. We'll sound check, get dialed in, sign all the stuff, and then I just walk. Go run, walk for the rest of the day until time to go do VIP. So
is it you like sort of idle hands or the devil's workshop kind of a thing? Like you can't keep yourself if you have downtime, you get yourself into trouble, or is it that it's conducive to positive things?
No, it's not that I like to say get into trouble. If I stay up late, my idea of getting in trouble is like staying up eating junk food.
Yeah, sure.
That kind of thing. And I just think it's good. It's healthier just to go play, wind down, and get in the bed and stay on a good schedule.
But I mean the walk, like why not hang out in your hotel room or CP? Like, so you're just walking. Is it because if you're sitting, you're in distress?
Yeah, I mean, I said it like I can't go sit. Like, I'll go sit at like a coffee shop, read my book, or like do those kind of things. But, I'll listen to an Audible book, whatever, like walking around. But I just like stay moving because I'm like, I don't know. I've the last couple years really become like that, just constantly like moving. And I think too, because I don't know, I don't want to just sit inside. It's been like really good for me. I know mood wise, it's just I'm so much happier when I'm like out walking around, constantly moving versus just I'm not gonna sit there and watch TV or anything like that. So I'm like, why not?
Is it meditative for you to walk?
For
like it's
sure.
sort of a walking meditation?
Yeah, and I mean, if I have meetings or anything like that, I'm on the phone.
Yep.
I'm just gonna walk.
Yeah.
Because if I sit down, I'm like pacing. I'll get up and like walk around the house. I'm like, go outside and try to walk and take those meetings.
That's one thing I've hated from the pandemic is now everyone wants to do fucking Zooms for everything. And I'm like, no, like, that means that I can't do my other thing at the same time. So I'd be like, oh, I don't have good reception. It's not working.
Right.
No,
totally.
Walk.
And it's funny because if it's with my agents or, with the label or whatever, they know I'm going to be walking around.
Yeah.
So.
I know, and it's probably I try not to even think about what it sounds like to other people because there's always noise and
especially
stuff.
with the AirPods, it's picking everything else up, and then most of the time my manager's like, are you walking on the highway? Like,
my wife said that to me the other day. She's like, it's like horrible. Like you can't hear anything you're saying. I was like, don't tell me that. It's gonna mess up like the one thing that's working for me.
I have to stay moving when I'm doing it. For sure.
I know. Yeah, and. It's weird. I think of all most of that stuff. My routine's sort of similar. Is like the physical benefits are totally unintentional. Like it's actually all about getting to the right headspace.
Yeah.
Not getting into trouble. It's like not going crazy. And then if it's keeping me in shape, that's extra. But that's not why I'm doing it.
Right. Yeah. For me, it's just. And you can tell, like, my mood, I have to work out every day.
Yeah.
I have to get up and work out.
Yeah.
Like, it has to happen or it messes with my mood. It messes with my day. And I'm like, it has been good for me as far as touring to not be so married to the schedule.
Yes.
Because, I have really bad OCD and there's certain things that I'm just extremely particular about. And so it was good for me to be like, okay, everything can't happen how you want it to happen.
Yes.
And to kind of like dial in and adapt to schedule. Because I mean, that's one thing that was really, really like shattering to me. And it caused, a lot of anxiety of being like in panic, which sounds dumb to a lot of people. But in my brain, it was just like, what do you mean we're not going to be here at this time? I have to do this at this time,
Yeah, no, the routine is cathartic and comforting and conducive to getting in the right headspace, but it can have this effect of making you feel like you're in control when you're not. So like fundamentally, we all have a certain powerlessness, right? And so the disruption of the routine, like travel, it can be good because it's forcing you to be a bit more resilient. You're having to figure out how to operate inside an environment where you don't get to determine how everything goes. It's not revolving around you. Sure. And that's probably good because otherwise you become super fragile, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, and I mean, the biggest, it was like overseas. You know, I just did the whole run over there and, you know, Germany and Paris and everywhere. It was just like, that's a whole other ball game of trying to find a gym over there. And instead of like looking at it now as like a stressor, I'm looking at it like, okay, this is a cool challenge. You get to find out. And then I got to, you know, visit a lot of really cool gyms and stuff over there versus stressing over it. And I'm like, it's such a dumb thing to stress about. Like, you're going to the gym to better yourself and because it feels good and you know, you really thoroughly enjoy it. So trying to look at it from a different perspective.
Yeah, it can almost become like a superstition, right?
Right.
And then it's not actually helpful or adaptive.
Right.
It's just an addiction like anything else.
Well, and I kind of got to this place too where everyone around me, you know, on my team was like, okay, we gotta, we gotta make sure Morgan gets to the gym, kind of thing. And I don't mind that as much either, because it's like, and my manager's always like, stay on your routine, you know, as much as, and I do try to stay on that as much as possible because I know it's like good for me. But
you're like, it can make you feel like a baby when people are like, you got, and it's like, I'll figure it out.
Right. Yeah. And, you know, too, for people that don't work out, or don't, they just think, they're like, you're crazy and I'm like, no, I mean, I really, it's good for me. Like, I know what helps me mentally, but again, it has been, like I said, really good to not have that ability every day, like to make it a challenge a little bit.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like I'll just on purpose I'll try to change up the order or the difference so I'm not so fragile that if it doesn't go my way, because it's like, look, on an ordinary Tuesday, if it doesn't go my way, whatever. But like, let's say I'm performing or I'm doing something and it doesn't go my way because my kids are sick or because the flight was delayed or whatever. And if I can't like handle that, if I'm so fragile that like fucks me up, then all of that work was for nothing. Like, the whole point is that you should be able to adjust and adapt, and the things are supposed to be making you better, not making you
worse,
weaker.
Yeah, for sure.
So you worked out this morning?
I did. Yeah. Sunday's a little easier. I just ran and hit a little bit of arms on Sunday.
Like, how far would you run?
This morning I only ran like 4 miles. Tomorrow I'll pick back up and do whatever my training schedule says. I'm kind of tapering down now with the with the race.
Is this all self-driven for you, or do you have like a coach that's like, this is what you're doing today?
I have as far as like working out, my friend Corey Gregory has the Max Effort program, and I'm good friends with him, and so he sends me all the workouts as far as like powerlifting and stuff like that. As far as the running, I just got that plan off the internet. I think it was like Pinterest or something, and that's what I've been working with. But that I have to have a double mastectomy in November, so that's on the 18th, and I've wanted to run a 100-mile race. That's been my thing, and so I know I'm going to be down for the count for at least 4 weeks. And for somebody that cannot like lay down and sit, that's like really messing with my head. So I was like, all right, you know, you've been doing all this running, like, you gotta just go for it and commit. And so
you're trying to squeeze a 100-mile race in between the mastectomy?
Yeah, November 4th. And so I was like, you know, I'm gonna go do that, and then I was like, it's gonna take my body a minute to kind of heal from that. So I was like, well, what better time than when you
just double it up,
gotta lay down. But you know, everybody's like, why are you? You know, I'm running it up north, and they're like, why are you? And I was like, it was the only available option the weekend I had off. There was actually one, I think it was here in Austin, that was in August. I think it was Austin. It was somewhere in Texas called the Habanero. I was like, yeah, that's not that. I was like, plus I needed that extra time too. I was like, you know, you got giving yourself a few more months to train, but it was the only weekend, and I was like, this is perfect. I'm going to go up there. I'm going to run it, and it's 30 hours. that you've got to do. Basically, it's on a loop, 4-mile loop, and you run as much as you can.
A 4-mile loop?
Which I like, too, because it's not like I've got to go, 20 miles before the next aid station, that kind of thing.
Sure.
So I can set up shop. I've got my crew and stuff. And, for me, that's good because I can look at it, like, all right, I need to try to get this many loops. As long as I kept an 18-minute pace for 30 hours, I can hit my goals.
I feel like but mentally, though, that's tougher in the sense that you're not having new scenery and you're not like, oh, I have to get to here to here. Like I think more in checkpoints or like,
gotcha.
Like I'm going to here and then I'm turning around and then I'm like halfway.
Right.
I think the loop of it, like I ran cross country and track in high school.
Okay.
And cross country was always better for me than track because there was less loops.
I am weirder in that sense where I know some people that would drive them crazy. Yeah. I like that. I was like, if I could find a race that's a 1-mile loop, I would be so down.
Just do it 100 times?
Yeah. I don't know why. For me, I love that because I'm like, all right, I can just count it off in my head. So something about that with me.
Do you write in your head while you do this stuff?
I do sometimes when I walk, especially like, early mornings, like heading to the gym. That's like a good time for me because I'll play like, if I have like a track on my phone, instrumental stuff like that.
Oh, you would run the track in your ears and then be riding to it?
Yeah, which seems to be a thing for me, like just continuing, just like, with the running and then with like the track, like I'll just keep playing it over and over. And so especially like the early mornings, like that's when I'm most creative, like especially when I come back from the gym and, it's, I'm back home by 9, 10 a.m., that's like my creative time.
Well, you probably have this feeling when you get back to your house at 9 or 10, you've gotten up, you've read, you've journaled, you've worked out. Yeah. Like you already won you know what I mean? Like
right,
you crushed it. That's like a great day. And so you probably have a certain confidence, a certain momentum. And then you're probably also looking around, everyone else is just getting started.
Up. Yeah, they're just having coffee. And I'm already, essentially done.
Yeah.
I don't know. For me, it's just it's like too an adrenaline rush for me as well. I'm happier. I'm up. I've just accomplished all this stuff. I mean, if I slept till 9 a.m., I would just want to lay there the rest of the day because my day's gone.
Yeah.
That's not, I can't function like that. I got to be up early.
There's this dancer named Twyla Tharp. She wrote this book called The Creative Habit, and she's talking about, she gets up, she starts a routine, and she's like, when I leave my apartment and I'm waiting for the cab, she's like, I already won. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like once the wheels are in motion,
right, you're going.
It's done. And so really the victory is just starting. It's just if you're starting, everything else takes care of itself.
For sure.
And I think for people who have trouble with discipline or aren't sort of locked into a routine, they think that it's this insane amount of willpower every day, but actually weirdly it becomes less and less because you're just, as long as you're starting and you get into the rhythm of it, it takes care of itself the rest of the way.
For sure. Agreed.
So you listen to the same song over and over again?
If it's like a track to like write to, I'll do that if I want to like try to nail something down. And I do that a lot on like the plane. I try not to, people will be watching movies or whatever on there, and I just can't. I'll watch a little bit of The Office because that's about the only show I watch. I watch that on repeat. But yeah, I'll try to like just play a track in my head and put my headphones in and play it and write the lyrics like that sometimes. Because obviously I can't have a guitar, out on the plane. People might not enjoy that. And so, it's moments like that I try not to waste too. Right. And it's good for me, especially like, walking or whatever. I like to, especially with the training, the main thing for training for an ultra like this is just trying to be on your feet as much as you can all day. Because, you got 30 hours doing that. You don't want to be sitting. So if I can just be out walking, I'll call my mom or whoever, or I'll be listening to this track and like working on stuff as I'm out moving.
When I work out or when I run and when I write, I will pick a song, and it's usually a song that'll like I can usually make it like a song work for like a week or something, and I just listen to that same song
Okay.
over and over and over again until it sort of blurs into something where I don't even know where it begins and ends.
Right.
And I just get into a groove that lets me sort of lose track of time.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're a little weird too.
Oh, totally, totally.
Most creatives are.
Well, you sort of find out what works for you,
For
and then
sure.
you're just like, I don't care as long
Yeah.
as it keeps doing
Yeah.
the thing. So for me, like that's like a currency. Like I have to. I'm always looking for those songs because I
Right.
feel like those songs are unlocking stuff.
Yeah.
So when I find one, then I'm like, fuck, okay, like this is a good one.
Right.
But then there's something transactional about it because like I'm using it up.
Yeah.
You know, like
Right.
it's like I'm sucking all the emotional valence and
Yeah.
meaning out of it. And then at some point I'm like, this doesn't do anything for me.
You're right. You got to move on.
Yeah. That's nuts though. So do you find like getting like I find like if I go for my walks or my runs, when I'm coming back, I'm like scribbling a bunch of shit down. Like Nietzsche said something like only ideas had while walking have any worth.
Nice.
And there's something about I think getting moving and being outside that gets the brain moving.
Yeah.
That if you were sitting there trying to do what you're trying to do,
Yeah.
you wouldn't have the same amount
Yeah.
of success.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, too, for me, like from a creative standpoint, I could go, if you told me to go in that room right now with a guitar and write something,
Yeah.
I could.
Yeah.
Might not be very good.
Yes.
You know, so for me, I don't push myself. I'm like, you know, with that, I'm like, if it comes to me, it comes to me, and it's something I'm going to use.
Yeah.
I know that. I have to be inspired with it, and
Yeah.
there's plenty of writers that can just go and write something to be amazing. I can't tell myself you've got to go write this and expect it to work. It could, but I prefer the stuff that inspires me. But I find when I'm walking, when I'm out, and I'm not just sitting there forcing myself to do something, it's so mindless for me. I kind of
Yeah.
just let my brain. So it is, it is like a meditation, I guess, for me, because I can't just sit there and really try to meditate. I've been working on that, but
Yeah.
that's
The sitting sounds like it'd be the hard part for you.
yeah. So for me, being outside, walking, and just trying to, I just let my mind run then, and then just kind of I soak it all in, and that seems to be what works for me.
There's this quote, I forget who said it, but it's something like inspiration is for amateurs.
Yeah.
So there is something about like, this is the time that I do the thing every day, right? Like if you only work out when you feel like it, most people are not going to work out.
Then I'm not going to work out. Right?
Yeah. So there's something about like, for me, it's like, this is the time that I do it every day. I show up. Sometimes it's good. Sometimes it's not. And sometimes I do great stuff. And then sometimes I'm just putting in the time. But then I find it's like in the afternoon or on the walk or the workout later that whatever problem I was having before, my mind fixes.
Right.
Or actually, wait, I got to flip that around.
Yeah.
So it's actually, it's more complicated than inspiration is for amateurs. There's something about showing up, being a professional, doing it at a set time, and then setting space and a kind of a meditative practice or an openness that allows for serendipity and just stuff to happen. So you got to let your mind just sort of chew on it in the background for a while.
Yeah. Agreed.
So for you, though, it sounds like it would take more discipline for you to rest and recover than to push yourself.
Yeah, for sure. And I know that, next month that I'm preparing myself for that, like mentally. But the doctor, she was like, look, you can walk out of here. You're going to be able to get it and walk out of here. And I was like, so I can walk. She's like, I encourage you to walk. And I was like, how much are we talking? And so she's like, I mean, don't be like crazy. But she was like, yeah, you need to walk. And she was like, within, hopefully like a week, you can kind of start doing, legs, maybe even sooner than that. And then like slowly like work your way up. And she was like, everybody's kind of different and you don't know exactly what's going to happen. But she's like, you can, with your health and like you being in shape, she was like 4 weeks, probably max. But again, everybody's different.
But I imagine like your average not even average, a coach would be like, you can't work out every day. There needs to be rest and recovery days. But for you, I imagine it's better for you mentally.
Yeah.
You would take the punishment physically because mentally it's more important that you are consistent.
Yeah. I mean, I go to the gym 7 days a week. I don't, I'm not recommending that for everybody, but I know a lot of people that do. And, I think I'm not going in there like on the weekends or like a little, the running is more intense on the weekends for me. I do take days off from running a ton, and I'll walk. But yeah, as far as like working out, I'll go to the gym. Like there's this bicep workout that I do every day because your body your arms, like your muscles start to adapt there. And there's like a lot of research into that. I'm not going to bore everybody. I don't recommend that for everybody. Everybody's body's different, but there's certain things like that I've like, worked on as far as like my shoulders. Like the first ultra I ran, I was so sore in my shoulders. So I was like,
just from holding your...
Yeah. So I was like, all right, we got to go back and we got to start going to the gym and training shoulders a lot. And I started doing that and strengthening my shoulders. This last race I ran, no shoulder pain. So it's things like that I like to like dial in on that stuff and see what works.
Do you ever think about what that energy directed towards your music and your career would do? Or are they balanced? Do you know what I mean? Like, that's obviously an incredible intensity that you're directing towards a thing that is not your main thing. Do you ever think about that?
Yeah, I think this has been really good for me within the last couple of years to like really start dialing in the fitness.
Yeah.
Because, I need to have something other than music, because I feel like if you get too engrossed in one thing, I think there's a lot of balance.
Yeah.
And so while I am really engrossed in like the fitness stuff, I also know that, when I'm on tour, it's like, oh, it's 5 p.m. I've got to go. I've got VIP. And then, I get a little break and then I go and I play the show and I deliver. And, I've got that kind of going in there. But I think you should have balance because for me, working out and doing all this I would say it's a hobby. It's obviously a lifestyle for me now, but I enjoy doing that. And it's something other than the music. And if I feel like, also I can't put everything I have into the fitness element because it's good for me to focus on the music as well. So I think it's good for me to have balance because if I just focused on music 24/7, I think I get really burnt out. I get really tired of that.
A friend of mine, actually, so he's like a mutual friend of a friend, and we were describing this person. It's basically that he was a partier who did music on the side.
Gotcha.
And I'm sure people like that. How much for you was all of this kind of a professionalization and it getting really serious about what you do?
Yeah, so I started kind of playing out my freshman year of college, and you weren't necessarily you weren't making any money.
Yeah.
But you got paid a lot of times in alcohol.
Yeah.
You got a free, beer tab, whatever. And so that's what I was like, all right, I'm going to make my money's worth off of that. And so I started drinking,
Sure.
And so I was working hard, obviously, but it wasn't like I got sober. I've been sober for 6 years now. And so that was kind of like the changing moment for me. It was like, all right, I was afraid, I think, to stop drinking because I'm like, I don't know what it's like to kind of go play a show without that courage. So it made me focus on other things. And that's when I really started to dial in. And I can say that if I didn't get sober, I don't think I would have I wouldn't have worked as hard by any means. And I wouldn't have gotten dialed in. I wouldn't have met the people that I met. And I don't think they would have wanted to have, worked with me either. That kind of made me concentrate and focus on that. And it was like, all right, well, I'm not drinking, so I kind of need to, what else can I look at? What else can I do? And so I kind of became, I don't want to say obsessed, but I was like, all right, you got to work hard at this because that was like very challenging to not do that, especially in the environment that I was in. So once I put that down and really started to focus on, hey, what do you actually want to do? don't half-ass this anymore. Like, you kind of got to get dedicated. And that's when I met my producer, Sadler Vaden. And he kind of sat me down and was like, you've either got to go all in with the music or keep working, your job on the side, whatever. He was like, but you're not going to be able to get to that level you want to get to if you don't just go all in.
Right.
And so that's what I eventually had to do. And so once I did that, and that's when I started to see everything changing.
There's a story that Roseanne Cash tells in her memoir where she's like, I think she'd done maybe 1 or 2 albums. Obviously, she comes from sort of music royalty,
right.
So she sort of gets a break in the business. But she has this dream, and in the dream, she's at this party, and she sees the singer Linda Ronstadt talking to this man. Do you know this story?
No, I don't.
And so she walks up to him. They all have name tags, and the man's name tag, it just says Art, right, which is symbolic of her craft. And so she goes and she tries to like get in on this conversation. As Linda Ronstadt's her hero, and she says, "Hi, I'm Roseanne." And Art turns to her and he just says, "We don't respect dilettantes." And then they turn away from her. And for her, this was this sort of turning point moment that she realized like she was doing music, but she wasn't really doing music.
Yeah.
She wasn't all in on it.
Yeah.
And so like there's this turning point in her career where she goes back and she gets coaches and she starts working with better collaborators. She stops, this is the moment where she's like, oh yeah, I was only kind of doing this thing, and now I'm really going to do this thing. And that's how she becomes ultimately what she ends up becoming.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Isn't that
I've not
crazy?
heard that story. That's great.
But I think there's Stephen Pressfield tells a version of that story also in The War of Art. He's saying that's the resistance, right? The resistance is, well, if I don't really try, if I am half doing it, or I have this addiction or this compulsion or this other thing, then I can always use that as an excuse for why it's not happening for me. And then when it doesn't happen, I don't have to feel as bad because it's not a rejection of me. It's only a partial rejection of me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's much easier to just try a little bit and then be like, okay. Yeah. I didn't go all in on it.
I could have if I wanted
to. Yeah. That whole thing versus, working really hard and then failing. But to me, I mean, obviously you don't really think like that, but I'm like, okay, at least I went out there and I gave it everything I had versus just sitting on the couch today. Yeah.
Well, and then probably being intoxicated is a way of just getting rid of all those feelings altogether. So you're just kind of, you're in a weird way, you're just living kind of in this moment.
Oh, yeah.
As opposed to having to think about what could have been, what you fucked up, what you're dealing with, what you're struggling with. You're just going along to get along.
Right. What was the quote? I can't remember, but most of our issues stem from not being able to sit in a room alone with our thoughts, kind of thing. And that is such, I had a moment. So when I ran, the 30 miles a couple weeks back, one loop, I put my headphones in, just one loop. And then when I came back around, I just threw my stuff down. And so it was just silence because when you start out, you're all in a pack and then it breaks off and everybody's running their own race. But it was like, it was just nature out there. I mean, I was like running through this park and up these trails and through the woods, and I didn't have anything else. And at first I was like, this is going to drive me crazy. But then I got to thinking about it. I was like, I started kind of like having all these ideas going through my head. I started kind of like talking to myself, and that's when I kind of like realized, I was like, okay, this can be, and I think that's a big, issue as well, is like sometimes you have to just kind of like let go. And that was a good focus for me.
Yeah, that quote is from Pascal. He said, all of humanity's problems stem from our inability to sit quietly in a room alone. And you're going like, yeah, I got these headphones and I got to take them off. But he said that quote in the 16 fucking hundreds.
Right. It's a lot. Like now he would be like, hey.
Well, it's also just like, oh yeah, that's been our problem for as long
forever,
as we've been
regardless of the internet, know. Yeah. But it is, it's like, and I've realized that a lot too with, like you'll go stay, you'll go see these houses, and I have friends, I'll go to their house. They have like a TV in every room. They have like a TV in the bathroom. And I'm like, I don't have a TV in my house.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. I'm not saying I'm better than anybody. I have my own vices, but I'm just like, man, we have to constantly. I'm one of those people that can't have something in the background, or I'm gonna like fixate on it. But again, I have my own little things. But
no, I did a talk the other day, and I went to a bunch of like CEOs, and I was like, how many of you have CNBC or Fox or CNN on a TV in your office with the sound off?
Yeah.
Which is it's kind of like an executive status symbol. I'm monitoring the world. And it's like, that is designed actually to be captivating with the sound off. Like it's designed just to catch they're supposed to be
attention,
arresting, emotionally aggravating images about real-time developing information.
Yeah.
And your job as a leader, just as it's a job of a creative, is actually to be thinking about what's going on in here and to be thinking big picture.
Right.
And so it's the opposite of what you should be cultivating, the kind of stillness that you need to make good decisions and to access the sort of muscle, to access the creativity or the insight needed to do what you do. And you're like choosing to operate on like 70% capacity because you have this low grade distraction happening in the other room.
Oh, for sure. And that's like, I hate TVs in the gym.
Yes.
Because I will I'm not interested in what's on there, but I'll be like working out, and then it's like there's something random on there that I start looking at, and I'm like, I quit. That's why I hate like TVs in there and stuff like that, because it's just a distraction. It's like, I don't even want to look at that. It's kind of like with the scrolling, it's just automatic going now, and it's like 30 minutes goes by and I'm like, I didn't need to see 45 videos of dogs.
Yes.
Like I just wasted 30 minutes where I could have been,
Well, you even have it like at the gas station now. You're like filling up your car.
Oh my gosh,
and
and it's right there on the pump.
Yeah, I like just like leaning up against the car and just like thinking and doing nothing even for 8 minutes or whatever.
Right.
And you're just like, no, now it's got there's like garbage clips and ads and you just can't
escape anything. Yeah.
I think about it at the airport. CNN has a deal with most airports to pay them to run CNN like in the airport. There's a special version of CNN. It's like airport CNN, so they only show like certain things. Like if it's going to be really traumatic, they don't show it. But the idea is
so
that
the traumatic plane crashes we're not going to see while we're in the airport.
But the point is, like, they know that even with the sound off, it will suck your attention to it. That's what the producer is watching it there backstage with a lot of times without the sound off, and he's he or she is sort of puppeteering the let's get people going thing. It's just not good for your mind.
No, it's not at all.
Yeah, the people I know that are the dumbest and the angriest are the people who consume the most television news.
Oh yeah, and those are the same ones that are the trolls on the internet too. Because it's like you've got all this time to just sit there and put everybody else down.
So, what was getting sober like for you?
For me, it was like I played a show in New York. It was my first time in New York. It was like one of those little shows that nobody got paid. You kind of came up there, and I was like, all right, I have to go to New York. And little did I know the show made zero difference in my career, but that whole experience changed my life. And I got up there, and again, alcohol. And as soon as my feet hit the ground, got out of the car, I just started drinking. And I drank so much that day. I drank more than I, have ever drank before. And I woke up the next day, no idea what happened. And that's such a scary feeling too, especially as a female, to, just let your guard down like that, especially where I was staying. I was not in a safe part of town. Like we had no money, me and my band. So we were like, and it was just like a hangover for me that was heavier than anything I'd ever experienced before. And that lasted for days. I remember the next day, I was like, hey, can somebody grab me a drink? We were at Penn Station. And they came back with a beer, and I meant a water. And
they
like
just
that,
assumed.
They just assumed. And so I had a beer. I took one sip of it, and I put it down. I was like, ugh. It tasted different to me.
Sure.
And, my motto was just always like the best way to kill a hangover is start drinking again, kind of like counterbalance it, which is super dumb. But that was it. That was the last drink I ever had. And I remember I got home, and it just seemed like everything in my life was just like kind of falling apart a little bit. And I was just like, what am I doing, kind of thing. And I'm like, I have an issue, and everybody's like, oh, you're too young, whatever. You just need to chill out. But I'm like, no, man, like I seriously, I am drinking more than I should be able to drink, and it's like taking over my life, and I'm doing stuff I don't want to do, and that's a problem too that we kind of have. I think it's getting better where people are starting to realize you don't just have to be some 40-year-old man that lost his job and just wakes up and pours
Rock
Jack
bottom.
in his cereal in the morning. Like,
Yeah.
there's sobriety and like alcoholism, like it looks different for everybody.
Sure.
And I was just like, all right, let's try not to drink. Let's just like work on this. And I was like, all right, I'm not going to drink for a month. And then, like that slowly started to change. And so, I had to change up my habits for sure. It was like, you're going to be that person that loves sparkling water.
Yeah.
We're going to do it. And now, I do. But it was just like things like that. Like, all right, you got to have something. If you have to have something in your hand, like make it water.
Yeah.
And certain little things like that. And at first it was hard, but, I think sometimes it's harder now because like the first month you're like, ugh, you can still taste it. You know why you're not drinking. And then, 6 months, I could still remember. Even a year, I could remember why I got sober. But as time goes on, you start to think, well, have I changed? Am I a little different now? Could I handle it? Could I just go have a beer or glass of wine or whatever? And then I'll have a dream that I drank something and it's always awful. It never tastes good.
Wow.
And as soon as I drink it, I'm devastated. And so I wake up and it's like, it takes me a minute to realize I didn't do it. But that feeling always helps me to remember, okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tell the story in Discipline is Destiny about the physicist, Richard Feynman. He's just sort of going to work one day and he feels, it's like 10 a.m. He just feels this pull, I should go get a drink. And he was like, that's not a good feeling.
Right.
Because it's the feeling of realizing that you're not the one in control.
Yeah.
That you have these desires or urges that they have you as opposed to you have them.
Exactly.
And we all kind of have stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like things that we're slaves to, the Stoics would say. And those are the things we should probably work on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think about it's like, do I have a phone or does the phone have me?
Have me. Yeah. I'm all social media. I haven't been on there, in like a week, whatever. I just took it all off my phone. And I did that a few months back. I was dealing with a bunch of stuff and like the media and everything. And I was just so like addicted to seeing what everyone was saying. And it was bringing me down. And for like 3 days, it was just like debilitating. I didn't go to the gym, which I mean, it was so weird for me. I just laid around.
Wow.
I didn't eat. I was like, and then finally I was like, why do you care what this random person is making up about you? Like, they read the headline of something and think it's true, and it's not. It's like, it's not true. Your friends know it's not true. Your family knows. Like, does this person's not even coming to your show. Like, they don't even know who you are. They don't even have a profile picture.
Right.
Like, and so I got off the internet and like, it's so crazy because I'd go pick up my phone and I'd scroll up and I was like, oh yeah, you don't have it anymore.
Yeah.
And then I'd get up and go do something. And so I was off for like almost 2 months, something like that. It was so great. And then I ended up, the record came out. So I got back on there and I have people running my social media, which is good. But then I'm like, oh, I don't need to let them do it. I need to do it. And then I get back on there and it's just so easy to fall back into that same trap. I think I'm the person that can get on there every now and again, but not really. Not from my own phone. I need to have my manager's phone and let me look at something. But I'm back off of there, and I've read more in this past week than I have because I'm always like, oh, I don't have time, which is so dumb.
Yeah.
Because it's like, no, you totally have time, but it's like I'll pick something up, start watching on my phone, and so now I'm like, okay, well, read that book, have that book with you,
right?
And so that's what I've been doing.
Yeah, I have my stuff on my wife's phone. I have a social media team, and then I have, if I want to check, it's like on my wife's phone. So I'd be like, hey, can I see that? And then she was like, I'm tired of you using my phone because I would just use it all the time. And then so I was like, okay, I'll get a second phone. And it's like, no, I just can't. I'm going to have to get rid of the second phone because I was just checking, even though I wouldn't take it with me, but I would just grab it. And you realize, I think, sort of, if you have any kind of addictive tendency or compulsion, or you're someone who's just kind of trying to numb something, you will find an outlet for that.
Well, it's such an OCD for me because people are like, well, don't read the comments. And I'm like, I've always had certain things that's like I would do. And the thing with having OCD is it's like, you're like, okay, I'm not going to do that. And then you're like, yeah, I got to do that. And you do it and you're like, I feel better for a second. And then it just repeats again. So that's what I was doing. I was like, well, if I know what they're saying, I'm going to feel better. And then I see something that I wouldn't have known this person said that, and it wouldn't have been in my head.
Yeah.
But now I know that, and I'm like, yeah, that's why OCD isn't. You can't just like scratch it. You gotta like let it go, and so that's what I've been doing for like the last week, and I can already feel myself like kind of winding back down.
That's the thing about social media is I don't know if I've ever felt better after.
No, I've never felt better.
I'm never like, I'm so glad I did that. That was a good use of my time. That filled me up.
Yeah.
That was positive. It's always like I'm angrier now, or I'm more envious now, or I'm numbed out now.
Yeah.
Like it's not, it's probably not activating anything good.
Well, my favorite part that I'm always like, well, I'll go look at these motivational pages.
Sure, I have a couple.
I'm like, yes, I will look at that and it'll be great. But then I'm like, I gotta watch this and then I gotta watch this, and it just keeps going. And I think some people really can, and I have friends that can like look at it for a little bit and then put their phone down, not touch it again. I am not like that. And then I try to be like, well, what if somebody really cool like sends me a DM? And I'm like, you have a team that can look at that for you, and that's their job, and they can handle that. And I do think, it is good every now and again. Like once I run my race and I'm done with my race, I've already decided that I will post after my race, that I've accomplished that. Cause I was fearful to like put that out there, but then I was like, I know this is going to be good to put it out there because every show I have somebody asking me if I'm still running that race.
Yeah, sure.
And so I'm like, that's out there. So for me, that's good. But I was like, I'll post. I want to update them on the race, the people that have been invested in that. But that's it for the year for me. I've kind of decided like.
Your team is posting stuff for you.
My team will post stuff, and they have to because, with the record, and then I've got new music coming out and just stuff like that and shows. And, for me, but I'm like, well, Morgan, you've got it. And then I was like, no, it's fine. Like, it's to connect with people, and I can get on there every now and again, and I could go post from my manager's phone or send them what I want them to post, but I don't need to read that. And, I'll get people that's like, you never respond to the comments. I'm like, man, I can't read those. Yeah. Because while there could be a million nice things, those 3 people that want to attack me that have no idea who I am, I'm going to focus on those. And I was like, those people don't matter in my life. They're dealing with their own stuff, and it's it has honestly nothing to do with me. They're dealing with something, and so they're on the internet putting other people down.
Yeah, Johnny Cash's manager told him one time, you have to have like a vault that no one can get in.
Yeah.
And that's what the Stoics would call this the sort of the inner citadel. You have to have this thing that protects the main thing that you do, your sort of sense of self, your sort of creative gift, what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
And the problem with social media is it's not only threatens that, it's the opposite of that. It's an infinite amount of people. Like you're better off just focusing on what you do. Because I find that sort of self-consciousness is the enemy of most creativity.
Oh, yeah.
So what are they going to think about this, right?
Yeah.
Am I coming off the way that I want to come off?
Yeah.
That's taking you out of what you're supposed to be doing, which is like, what do I have to say here? Do I think this is good? Is this exciting? Is this interesting to me?
Right.
And did I say what I wanted to say?
Yeah.
And obviously feedback is important because you're not just making it for you, but you can't open yourself up to unlimited feedback from the world.
No. And that's, I was like a week ago, my siblings came to a show, and they're all younger, and the 5-year-old, like I just watched her, and she does what she wants, and she just says things, and she's just like happy, and I'm like, man, don't lose it, because I'm like, I was like that at one point too, and like she just is so excited to just like go do things, and they're not worried about what I'm thinking or what anybody else is thinking, and it's just sometimes like really good for me to be around that and witness that again, because we get so caught up, and You know, like I've got a song on the new record called 27 Club, and I wrote it and I put it on there and I recorded it and everything was mixed and mastered and was being pressed. And I got it in my head one day that was too vulnerable. I needed it gone. And I like freaked out about it. I called my manager. I'm like, this has to go. And they were like, well, it's already. And I was like, I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care. I want it gone. I don't care what it costs me, what I lose. I want it gone. Like I can't, you know, and it turned out to be one of everyone's favorite songs on the whole record. And it was the most vulnerable thing on there, but I was like freaking out about it. I was like, I don't want it out there. I'm worried what everyone's going to think, because for me, that song was so metaphorical and showing where I'm at in my life. And I'm like, I don't want that attention that this song's going to bring. I don't want to deal with that. And it ended up being like, well, it's too late because and then it turned out to be the best thing for me. But
yeah, isn't the point of music to be vulnerable?
It is. And but even, you know, like I was like, this was too much, you know, this was too, and then I was like, did you do that with your first record? It's like, no, you didn't. Because that's the thing about a debut record, is you put it out, and if it flops, well, no one knows because it's your debut record and you didn't have all those people. But, you know, with the second one, there's more eyes on it.
Yeah.
If your first one did really good.
Yeah, at the beginning, you're just like, I hope someone will see this.
Right. And I, you know, moving forward, I had to take a minute. So I'm putting out an acoustic record, and I sat down and I've written all these songs by myself, and it's just me and a guitar, and, you know, we've put some strings on it and like piano, but it's acoustic. It's just like really chill, and it's focused on the songwriting again for me. And, you know, I kind of just hit this place too. I've toured relentlessly all year, and it's been great. But, you know, I feel like it was just the same. I was doing a lot of the same things. And so I had to kind of take a step back and be like, why did you start doing this? Where's that hunger? Because, you know, now I'm doing great. You know, I'm making money, and I'm able to, you know, I bought a house and a nice car, and I've got all this stuff. But I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Are you happy?
Yeah.
And, you know, it's like, I'm like, man, you have all these things, and the shows are great. And I do love playing the shows. That's not even an issue, but it's like, are you hungry anymore? Are you hungry for it? Because I'm like, I look back at when I lived in a 1-bedroom cabin paying $500 a month for all my bills and barely able to do that, and driving a shitty car with no AC, and like going and playing these shows and making no money, but I was hungry and I was excited.
Yeah.
I was like, so you gotta like get back to that and not get so caught up in what it, and I remember I was like, I didn't care what anybody thought.
Yeah.
I would go out there and open for these people, and I'd walk out there just me and a guitar. And so that's why I decided to go do this acoustic record, because when I started thinking like that again, I went and wrote 25 songs. And all by myself, and they're lyrically some of the best songs I've ever written in my life. And, you know, I took them to the label. I sent them like 3 of these songs, and they're like, this is amazing. Like, you got the CEO, Sony, calling you like, this is the best stuff I've ever heard. Like, this is raw, emotional. He's like, people were crying in the meeting. And so I was like, okay, you gotta like, get back to that and stop worrying what everybody else was thinking. This was also during the same period of time that I was off the internet.
Yeah, sure.
And I was like more responsive to like emails, because it was like emails was all I had on my phone. And normally I hate checking emails. So my manager's like, you're really on top of things these days, because I wasn't distracting and worrying about what everybody else was saying, because those same people that want to talk shit about me on the internet and make me feel bad about myself, if they see me on the street, they want to talk to me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, so what does it matter?
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't. And at the end of the day, you really just have to like start focusing. And that's such an issue for me, is like just focusing on the present moment as well. But when I started to like let that self go, or let all that go, you know, I started to feel better. And then of course I fell back into reading stuff on the internet. And now I'm back off of that, and I'm doing a lot better. But
well, that's I think what he meant by having the vault is you have, you know, now you have money, you have space, people are interested in what you're doing. That's what success is. Yeah. But you still have to figure out how to preserve the original space or like childlike state that the stuff comes from. Like for me with the Daily Stoic, it started with a couple thousand people, and now I send out this email every day to 700,000 people.
Wow.
And so if I think about that too much, it changes what I'm willing to say, what I won't say. If I read whether people liked today's email or not, like every once in a while I'll get emails from people I know, like that'll forward the email back to me and be like, hey, I like this one. And that means something to me.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, just think if 1% of the people didn't like today's email, 99% of people liked it, but 1% didn't. That's 70,000 people. Wait, no, 7,000 people, right? 1% of 700.
Don't ask me. I play music. I don't do math.
But anyway, that's a lot. That's more than you could possibly conceive of, right?
Yeah.
And so, and if you got even 1% if you heard from 1% of 1% of people who didn't like you, the 1% people who didn't like you, it would crush you emotionally.
Exactly.
You can't possibly let that in. And so you have to create this space. And that's also true. It's like you got to keep space from family and friends and the annoying neighbor, and that you're not you have to create this space that allows you to do what you do. And it's weirdly harder to do the more successful you are because there's more stuff trying to get in.
Yeah. I mean, that's And so, cause too, it was like, I mean, I went to the airport the other day. I landed in LA, and there, with all this crazy stuff going on in my life.
Oh, was there paparazzi and stuff?
Paparazzi. And I was by myself, and I've never dealt with anything like that.
Sure.
And I was like confused because I'm like waiting. Of course, everybody's wanting to laugh and talk about what I had on. I had on sweatpants and a t-shirt and a hat because, guys, I got up at 3 a.m. that morning to get on that flight. I had like an 8-hour day already.
Yeah.
And I get off the plane and I'm getting my bags, and I look over, I was walking, and then there's this guy in my face asking me all this stuff. And at first I was like quiet, but then I looked at him at one point. I was like, man, you're giving me a panic attack. Can you like stop? But there's nothing I can do about it. And I'm by myself.
Yeah.
And later, all that like was out, and I was like, I got on there to read the comments.
Yeah.
Which I should not have done. And they were awful. I mean, from everything from my looks to how disgusting my tattoos are to how I'm pathetic. Why would anybody, who cares about her? She's a piece of shit, like all this stuff. And I'm like, man, I don't, and so I had to like take a step back and be like, but then I went and read some other articles of other people, and I read the comments, and they were all awful too. So I was like, okay, well, we're all getting this shit.
We also got to think about who is leaving comments on the
actual
bottom of articles about like musicians or like you realize it's selecting for the most garbage, have nothing going on people in the world.
Then I started reading, people were like, well, she called the paparazzi on herself. I'm like, first of all, I'm some hillbilly from Virginia.
How do you do that?
I have no idea how that is. I want to be left alone. I'm like, if I call the paparazzi on myself, I'm not going to have on $8 sweatpants from Walmart that have a hole in them that I did not realize until I got to the airport because I got up at 3 a.m. There's just like things like that. But I was like, well, why do you care what someone who, they don't understand this situation, like what goes on and like what you deal with. And they don't, quit giving them that time of day because they're living in your head. And honestly, it was kind of good for me because then I was like, put your phone down. That was the big mistake of waking up this morning and going picking up your stupid phone. Like, get up, make your coffee and read. Like, stop like putting that stuff in your head. And people don't know. They don't know what the truth is, but you know what the truth is. And at the end of the day, in 4 days, they're going to be on to the next thing. They don't care about this. And it's easier said than done.
There's something paradoxical about it, though. I was just thinking about this. Like, I was going to the airport the other day, and I was like thinking about what I was going to wear. And I had to choose to wear a sweatshirt because if I wear T-shirts, people see my tattoos and then they recognize me. Yeah. And I was like, well, this sucks. Like I'm having to choose what I wear so I don't get bothered, and I'm wearing a hat, I'm wearing a mask so I can just be in my space and not get talked to by people, which, because it's sort of the preferred space for me is it's wonderful to talk to people.
No, totally. I get it.
But if I can avoid it, obviously I would. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, for sure.
You know what I mean? it's a champagne problem, but it's still like weird, you know?
Right. And that's the thing is they don't, because that's how it was. It was like, people think that I called this or like,
Yeah.
you know, someone else called this on me. I'm like, I didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, I was like, and then everybody's like, look how mad she looks. Like, and I'm like, I didn't know they were even looking at me, guys.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that's my face. I was waiting. I was irritated that my bags were taking so long. And I'm like, if you would have looked at anybody else standing around there, like, I was tired. And I was like, Warren, who cares? Who cares? And that's such like a hard thing. And also, you should just don't get a throat tattoo because, like, if I was trying, I would have to turtleneck and gloves over here.
Because what happens is like people vaguely understand. They're like, I think that's that person. But then if you have distinguishing marks, they're like, it's definitely that person.
Yeah, and it's and people are like, who cares about this? Who even is this? And I'm like, okay, I don't care if you know me or not. I would rather you not know me if you're going to talk like that anyways. But it's like, I'm working on a docu-series and a lot of people were like, who would even watch this? And so then that gets in my head, but I'm like, okay, well, don't watch it then. Like, I mean, everybody kind of has to start somewhere. And I'm like, I have a fan base that will be interested in this. And if you're not interested in that, that's fine. I'm probably not interested in what you're interested in, It's just all this, and I look back at most of the issues that I have had with becoming more successful is the internet. It's not the amazing fans that come to my shows and they spend their hard-earned money to buy my stuff and listen to this and allow me to do this. It's not those people, because those people are great and I'm always going to want to listen to them. And those are the people that I do want to know their opinions on things, because I'm like, they've been with me the longest and they're, there for me, and they get me, and we're connected. I really do feel that connection with them. I was like, who cares about the people who literally don't even follow you? They're just coming to your page to ridicule you.
When as I was thinking about that as I was going to the airport, I was just like, but I chose this. Like
Exactly.
the paradigm, and it's like, it's not just I chose it. I could shut it down in 2 seconds. I just stop posting shit and go back to writing my books. And authors never get recognized, right? And so it's like it's for me, like you said, when my books were just working and it was just the books, it'd be like once a month someone would be like, are you Ryan Holiday? Because who makes it all the way to the fucking back of the book and reads the thing? It was with social media, which was a deliberate choice that suddenly millions and millions 100%. Of people are seeing you on this. And so it's like, it's this thing where I'm not resenting it, but I'm like, it's making me uncomfortable. I'm not liking it. But I also fucking chose it. And so that's this weird thing that we do to ourselves.
That's what you deal with. And that's what people they're like, well, you chose this. And I'm like, yeah, you're not wrong. I did. But I don't think, because, like at the beginning of my career, I was like, man, that had to be so cool to like have somebody like taking photos of you, especially when you're a little kid and you're playing that you're a rock star or whatever. And you're like, oh, no, don't take. And then I'm like, yeah, well, that's not actually how that works when you go, and it's just like stuff like that. And I'm not, then too, it makes me have a lot more respect and understanding, because now when you see like these tabloids and this stuff that I used to be like, oh yeah, like look at what and then now I'm like, yeah, that's probably not even real.
Right.
That's probably not even real. And so now I don't click on that stuff anymore about other people, because I'm like, yeah, I'm not giving you that click that you need, because half of this probably isn't even true. And, who cares? Like, this is a real person. I don't care if they are, uber famous and like they do something. I'm like, somebody down the street or someone that's in that grocery store beside of you has done something really stupid, probably, but it's not on the internet, and not, millions of people aren't looking at that. And we are, at the end of the day, all connected. And I think we totally, I forget that. I think everyone forgets that. And I'm like, it's just, but yeah.
Yeah, I think the same thing that makes someone an addict or makes them, there's part of that, I think, in every artist, some desire to be validated and known and understood. So it's this kind of, I wouldn't call it an original sin, but there is this thing in it, and then you get it, and then you're like, I think you get it, and then you're like, oh, that didn't actually do for me what I thought it would do for me.
Right.
And now it's not an inconvenience, but now it's just this thing. Like, it's like you did this thing in Hawaii the sailors introduced these rats, right? Rats would come off the ship, so they had all these rats. So then the people in Hawaii were like, well, we got to get something that eats the rats. So they introduced these ferrets or these mongoose. And then it turns out the rats are nocturnal and the ferrets live during the daytime. They don't even, but the point is, but now they have a ferret problem also, right? And it's kind of like that. You think that, hey, if I get to this level, I do this thing, it's going to fix this problem.
Right.
And then it doesn't. And now you just have this other fucking thing.
It's in it too, you know, it's like you said, it's a champagne problem. And it's like, you don't like it when things aren't going good or, you know, they're going bad. But when, you know, the attention is making things great, then you're like, oh, this is great. You know, and it's like, we don't get to choose how things go. And so it is. But again, like, the people that, and that's the thing, you got to focus on the people that support you and the reason that you're doing this, because that all goes back to like, you know, me being afraid to put 27 Club out. I'm like, the people that connected with that song are because they're going through it. And I'm like, okay, even if, you know, only one person connected with that song and it helped one person, hell yeah. You know, and the same with the docuseries. I'm like, if one person watches that and is like intrigued by that and enjoys it and it helped them in some way, right, or, you know, and or goes and runs a race or goes and does something proactive like with the double mastectomy or like figures more out about their health, and I'm like, hell yeah, I helped one person. And, you know.
Well, 27 Club is a great song, and it's probably partly, I mean, the 27 Club is probably rooted kind of in what we're talking about in the sense of like why musicians tend to die at that age or before that age is you think getting that success or fame or money or whatever it is, it's going to fix you.
Yeah.
And it doesn't. It doesn't fix you because you're never going to fix inside stuff with outside stuff.
No, and that's, you know, that's such an issue for me too, is I'll look, and I have to remember that too, even with the ultra running or whatever. I'm like, the gym's not going to fix you. You still have to.
You have to do the work. You
have to do the work. That's helping you for sure. Mm-hmm. And I, you know, to be healthy and to do these things, but it's still, it's all the mental work and the inside work, the soul work is the hardest. And it's the one I typically am like, ugh.
Yeah. I mean, it's easy. It seems crazy to say and maybe even a little egotistic, but it's like, it's easier to go get famous or to make a lot of money or to sell a lot of records or sell a lot of, it's actually easier to do that shit than, which the odds are infinitesimal of being able to accomplish, right? Like how many people are trying to do those things and don't. Yeah. It's actually easier for some people, for people like us, to do that than to sit quietly in a room alone and do the other work. Oh, it's way harder.
Yeah. And, you know, for sure. And it is definitely way harder to do that, it feels like.
Well, it's way harder also because how do you know if it's working? Nobody's clapping for you as you're doing it.
And that's the thing that it's like you have to remind yourself, because it's crazy too, because it's like I get off the stage and you have to understand, right before COVID, I mean, I finished recording Reckless a week before the lockdown. And I was just like, okay, what, and of course at that time I'm like, I get a week off, you know, like whatever. But before that, I had not played any headline shows. I was not selling anything out. I was lucky to make $200 a show, maybe $500, you know, that I split with a band. Like, and then coming out of that, and the first show I played, coming back, the release show, 2 sold out shows.
Right.
And so it was very like different for me. I went into COVID, nobody really knew who I was. And I don't want to say that in a bad way. Yeah. I had a good following.
Sure.
But it wasn't like it is now. And fortunately for me, I still have those fans, and they were great. And, you know, they helped support me through COVID with the Facebook Lives and all that. But, you know, it wasn't like it is now.
Right.
And so coming out of that, and then I'm like selling out shows, and I do my first headline run, and it's sold out, like, and upgraded and just like crazy. And then it's like, so you go and you work all day, and you go and you play for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and then you go get on the bus, it's just silent.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's weird. And when I came off of that tour and I went home, it was like I was excited to go home, but at the same time, it's weird to not have people, a couple thousand people telling you how much they love you every night.
Yeah.
And it's like this weird feeling. It's like you want that step. So it's like figuring out, in therapy, I'm trying to figure out how to balance that home life, road life, because it's not, I think everyone has narcissistic tendencies. You take a selfie and post it on the internet. You're not posting the ugly selfie. You're posting it because you think you look good.
Sure.
Come on.
You're taking 5 and you're picking the one you look best in.
Exactly.
And,
Like I do that. I'm not going to, so it's like you have these tendencies, but it's going kind of, going back to that. It's just like, you got to, I think you have to find that balance no matter what you're doing.
Is that what the homesick, road sick?
Yeah, for sure. And, it's just like, when you're home, man, I talk to all artists deal with this. It's just like, because I love touring. I do. And like connecting with these people, and it's, playing and seeing people sing these songs that you've written when you're dealing with such a difficult time, singing that back to you, crying and like having that moment. You can't replicate that. There's just nothing else like that.
Yeah.
And it makes, some small town kid like me growing up in the middle of nowhere sit back and be like, wow. And so you want that and you love that, you crave that. And then it's like, but you miss home when you're out there, and you miss home. And it's like, it's hard. It's a lot, especially my band, like they've got kids, they've got wives, and I see like how difficult that is for them to be gone. And then it's like you go home, and I'm home, and then I start getting like, okay, I haven't done anything in a minute. I need to get back out there. And it's like this tugging. And that's why like next year touring, I've kind of like found like for the headline tour, let's do like 3 weeks on and like 2 weeks off. And then like another 3 weeks on, like something like that versus, we were gone for like 2 months, just straight, no breaks. And that's a little harder, but it's like kind of finding that balance. But it is totally like, it's a weird feeling because I'm not I'm so grateful for everything, and I'm so blessed because it's like the moment that the more negative stuff when everybody's coming to your page and doing that. The saying, no publicity is bad publicity.
Yeah.
And again, people think I'm that smart to even know how to do any of that stuff. I'm like, man, come on. But it's just like, it's this a bit of tug and war, but again, it all comes back. Everything for me has circled back to balance. And I think this year has been such a learning curve for me. And the one thing that continually comes back to my mind is balance.
Yeah, there's a tension where like when I'm at home and I'm in my rhythm and I'm getting to do the routine exactly as I like it every day, I'm going to see my kids, we're spending time together. I can feel the relationship getting better. And then I'm like, this is how it's supposed to be. My work is better. Like I didn't go anywhere for 500 days in COVID. Like I didn't travel for work for 500 days during COVID. And I was like, holy shit, this is like, I'm operating at a whole other level. Everything in my life is working. And then you're like, but I got to get back on the road. Like, then you're like, someone wants to pay me somewhere to not do this? Yes. And so you have these two parts of yourself, this part that knows what's working and knows what's better. And then you have this other part that needs to do this thing, both professionally and in its own way personally.
Right.
And it's the balance of it is so tough.
It's interesting. And it's like, and I think everyone deals with that in some sense. We all have what we have to do, and then the things that we like feel like we want to do. You have your job, and then you've got this, but then it's like we feel like we're being pulled 2 different ways. And again, that looks different for everybody.
Well, but it's hard to calculate the opportunity cost, right? So it's like you're going on the road and you're like, this is what I'm making being on the road. This is good. But what's harder to calculate is when I'm home, I'm writing better. Yeah. I'm happier.
I'm sleeping more. I'm eating better. Yeah. I'm on a schedule. And 2, like
that's worth something. That's
worth so much. And
more.
I had to really sit back as I go into the next year because I did a lot this past year of saying yes. And I'm not really even talking about shows. I talked about other things that I was saying, and I was just wearing myself thin.
Sure.
And like right before the record came out, there were like 2 days where it was just like stack.
Yeah.
And I had to get up extra early. It was like, all right, if I want to work out today, which I do, and I have to do that, I have to get up at 3:30 this morning and I have to do all this stuff. And then I'm still working till 11 p.m. tonight doing these things. And I look back and I'm like, you wouldn't have worn yourself that thin. Say no. Yeah. And I look, and that kind of all came to me as well when I was like looking back at the things that I, the way I used to operate before things really took off for me. Is I'm like, you didn't have as many things to say yes to.
Yeah, you thought you were good at saying no, but it's actually you just weren't being asked to do that
now
much.
I'm like, hey, you can't say yes to everything. You can't be so accessible, and that's the problem. Like, I can reach anybody right now off that phone, and so that's. But I look back, and this last year, I missed 3 weddings of people very close to me going to play shows, and I'm like, I don't really even remember those shows or how much money I made, but I'm like, I do remember seeing my whole entire family together 3 separate times, and we rarely get to do that. We don't get to do that, and I'm like, I missed out on that, and and so to me, it was like I had this amazing shows, and I'm very, very blessed. But I'm like, going into this next year, I have to make time for my family, and my fans tell me that all the time. They're like, they literally, and that's what's so great about these people. They'll come to VIP, and they'll be like, hey, you should make some time for yourself. Yeah. Which I think is amazing they're saying that. And
when you're in your head, you think like saying no, like you're going to disappoint people, and then it's only in retrospect that you realize nobody gives a shit. Like when I ask people to do stuff and they say no or they don't respond, you know what I think about it? I don't think anything.
Right. You're like, okay,
I asked 20 people and 8 said yes. I'm thinking about the 8 people that said yes.
Right. And that, and that's why I'm like in this next year, I was like, I have a list of like interviews I'd like to do or appearances that I can make. Like, I'm like, I want to work towards those, but not just do, if that's the thing too. I'm like, only go do things that mean something to you and that you're interested in. Yeah. I did a lot of things this year that I was like, oh, I don't want to do this. And I'm like, why are you doing it then? You don't get that time back. And I do agree on pushing yourself sometimes. And sometimes it is good to go to do these things. But I'm also like, there's so many things that are like, this is such a good opportunity. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be miserable. So I'm like, I don't care if, this could have been an amazing opportunity and like boosted my career 1,000,000 points, but I'm going to be miserable. I'm like, I would rather go do something that means something to me. And I think I really have to focus on trying, again, balance. It's all balance.
When my books first started to sell, I met this sports psychologist who works with all his baseball teams, and he gave me this amazing advice. He was like, look, he's like, when guys first make it, especially the guys that come from like South America or Costa Rica or these other countries, he's like, they got there because they fucking swing at everything. Yeah. He's like, there's even a saying from like the Dominican Republic that you don't walk off the island. And like you have to hit, right? Yeah. You hit at everything. You don't get there by being walked. Right? And he's like, but as soon as you get in the league, he's like, it's all about it's all about swing discipline or pitch discipline. Yeah. It's all about what you don't swing at. Right. Because the best people in the world are throwing pitches at you to try to trick you effectively.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And so he's like, it's all about saying no. Yeah. And he gave me this sign that's in my office. It's between 2 pictures of my kids. And so there's one on the top, one on the bottom. In the beginning, in the middle, it's just this sign that says no. Like capital letters, no. Yeah. Because when you're saying yes to stuff, it's not just you're saying yes to stuff and now you're busy. You're saying yes to stuff, and by definition, everything you say yes to is saying no to something else. Yeah. And a lot of times, that's not a different opportunity that could be worth more. You're saying no to yourself, like to your mental health, to your physical health, to your creativity, to just happiness and enjoying the success that you have. Right. And so you have to get so good at saying no, or I wouldn't say I'm good at saying no, but I'm good at just not responding. I've gotten way better at just ignoring it, and a lot of times it goes away.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Napoleon had this policy of he would sometimes open his mail like 3 weeks late, because by the time you opened it, a lot of things would have resolved themselves.
Right. Yeah.
And that can be true. When people are offering you stuff with deadlines, you're like, if I just respond like a week late after,
Yeah.
oh, sorry, I missed it. They don't know.
For sure.
It's of course it's better if you have the confidence and the security and the upfrontness to be like, I can't do it, but you don't have to.
Yeah.
And you don't have to apologize. That's the other one. Someone told me two things. One, which is like, you don't have to say sorry.
Yeah.
And when you give an explanation, what you're often doing is asking them to argue with you. And then the other thing they told me was like, you don't owe anyone a response. Like
Right.
if someone sends you an unsolicited inquiry, like you don't owe them stewing about it, thinking about it, justifying why you can't. You didn't ask for it.
Exactly.
You can just pretend you didn't get it.
Right. That is very good advice.
Yeah. What? Oh, okay. All right, cool. But you have that great line. Was it in Psychopath where you say, it's a rule down south that you can't talk about your mental health?
The night. Yeah.
Yes. It's hard to talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
Because it's vulnerable.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it really is. And like growing up too around these, these the southern men in my life, but even so, more of the women, obviously my mom was much more of like asking me about things and like talking about stuff, but the men, like, especially my grandpa and them, they grew up, they did not have therapists. They were lucky to have food on the table, so it is, but I do think things are getting a little better with that because we're talking about it more, and that's like the biggest thing. But even then, talking about stuff, I don't know how many therapy sessions it took for me to really be like, okay, I'm gonna like actually be openly honest, like, and actually in depth with you about what's really going on now.
Yeah, no, I hate this bullshit that like Gen Z and millennials are fragile and they have all these mental health issues. It's like, just because you didn't treat your alcoholism or your anxiety or your depression doesn't mean you didn't have it.
Exactly.
I would argue that people are no more or less unhealthy than they've ever been in history.
No.
It's just people are actually doing something about it. And by the way, part of the reason we have these issues is because you didn't deal with your issues and your parents didn't deal with their issues. And it's a chain of suffering.
And the thing is, no matter what century you're in, like we talked about it earlier, like there's a whole new set of issues going on.
Yeah. Yeah, but people are people and have the same fucking problems that they've always had.
Right, for sure.
Well, this was amazing. Thanks.
Yeah, no, thanks, man. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah, thanks for making time.
Yeah, no, for sure.